Hello and welcome to Ain't Gonna Lie, the show with real questions and real answers produced by real teens. My name is Matt and I'll be your host. For the past 6 months, the Valley United Way's Youth Leadership Program has been researching the topics that affect the teens of the Valley. Today, Thea and Sarab will give you the startling facts about teen gambling in the Valley.
Hi, I'm Sarab.
And I'm Thea, and today we're going to share some facts with you about teen gambling. Have you ever made a bet with your friends about the outcome of a certain situation? Have you ever played card games like poker or blackjack for real money? You may not think these activities can be considered teen dangers, but the reality is they are harmful.
Really? Well, we have poker nights all the time. My mom makes food for us, and it keeps us away from unsupervised parties, from drugs and alcohol abuse.
But well, the reality is that gambling, even small card games with your friends, is illegal, and it's become a growing problem among American teens.
But what about online gambling?
Online gambling is just as bad as regular gambling. There are more activities going on at once and a better chance for you to become addicted. Gambling can be an addiction, and the earlier you start, the more likely it is that it will become a problem for you. You can end up losing your job, your money, and even your house if it's not under control.
Well, I think what parents believed is that gambling kept children away from just sitting in front of the computer or playing games all the time, but that's not true. It is a serious addiction, and it can be harmful for you.
It's been shown that there's a link between teen gambling and increased use of drugs, alcohol, and even suicide. Games like Texas Hold'em have exploded in the past few years. Things like poker nights and pooling money for bets have become increasingly popular and have swept through Connecticut high schools. These activities are becoming regular habits for many teens, and they're exposing them at a younger age to the dangers of gambling. Before they know how to balance a checkbook, teens are betting away their money, or even their parents' money, and they have no way of getting it back. Don't want to end up on the losing side of this bet? Here are some facts about teen gambling and some tips on how you can avoid breaking the bank before you even have an account.
Now, Ryan and Liz will share with you the results from a survey conducted throughout the Valley.
When we surveyed teens in the Valley, we asked them if they believed that gambling was a problem among teens. 16% said yes, while 84% said no.
When asked, does gambling affect one's social or academic life, 49% said yes, while 51% said no.
Now to Danielle to talk with an expert about gambling.
Hi, my name is Danielle, and today I am here with Jennifer Dewitt, the Director of Central Naugatuck Valley Regional Action Council. Today, she is here to help us learn a little bit more about problem gambling. How prevalent is youth gambling in Connecticut?
Well, right now, recent research shows that across the nation, more young people have experimented with problem gambling, or I should say with gambling, than with alcohol or other drugs. Right now, 1 out of 3 Connecticut high school age youth have gambled illegally in the lottery. It's illegal to gamble until you're 18 for Connecticut lottery. And more high school students have gambled than tried alcohol or other drugs. 87% of Connecticut high school students have gambled, and 67% of Connecticut high school students have tried alcohol or other drugs. So it's about 20% more that have engaged in gambling. Right now, there are more young people in treatment for problem gambling right now than in the last 10 years combined. And that, I think, could be because in the last 10 years we've had one of the largest casinos in the world here. So a lot has changed in our state around gambling, the availability of gambling, gambling activity that goes on in our families. Recently, you know, there have been the poker championships on TV and ESPN, and who would have thought poker was a sport? But now I think there's an attitude that young people have about a quick way to get rich with minimal effort involved, and they think that there's really a skill and a savvy involved with being a professional poker player, when no matter who you play with or no matter how much you play, it's always a game of chance. And there's something about young people, their brains are not developed to the point where they understand that fully. They're more likely to be impulsive and to take risks than older people are. So for young people specifically, just by being a young person, if you are young and you choose to gamble, you're more at risk for developing problems with gambling than if you'd waited until you were older to gamble.
Right. And at what age do they start to develop a gambling habit?
Well, I'm going to ask you. What is the first time that you can remember in your life, young as you can go back, winning something?
Oh, really young?
Winning anything. Winning a ribbon or a prize or a stuffed animal at a fair. What's the youngest you remember winning something?
Probably around 5 or 6.
And what did you win? Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I used to go camping, and there are gymnastics competitions, so I would win ribbons for that.
Okay, but you did hard work for that.
Right.
I want to think of winning something on a chance.
Bingo.
Okay,
We
how
played
old were
bingo
you?
all the time when I was little at my
Okay.
grandmother's house.
All right, and what's the most you ever won?
Well, we played for like nickels and quarters. So.
That's a lot of money when you're 5.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And do you remember how it made you feel?
Oh, great, probably.
All right. That's the first situation where you could begin to develop a gambling problem. So it depends on the individual. It depends on your first win, or the first win that made you feel good or feel special or feel like, wow, I'm really lucky. And for some young people, that feeling and that emotion is so strong that it sets up a pattern and a habit. And say you go to the fair and then you win the biggest stuffed animal at the fair and you're like, wow, I'm really lucky.
Yeah.
And then you enter a raffle in school and you win that brand new BMX bike and you go, wow, I'm really good at this. And so, you know, it starts a pattern where we get a rush and we get a chemical and a hormonal change in our brain that says, ooh, this feels really good. And then there's other factors that lead it to become a problem for some people. So it depends on the individual. There are some people that never engage in any kind of gambling until they're in their teens or 20s, or maybe just never get it. And then there are other people who have a predisposition or a special win that for them starts a chain of activity or reaction that says, I want to feel that way again. That feels really good. Who doesn't want to be a winner? So that is a draw for some people to develop problems with gambling.
Right. How can underage gambling be helped?
Well, there's a lot of different things that can be done. There are things that young people can do, there are things that parents can do, and there are things that our schools and our communities can do. For any adult, it's important not to minimize the seriousness of problem gambling for young people. For young people, problem gambling usually goes along with other addictions like alcohol use, tobacco use, or other drug use. And with anyone, no matter what age they are, addictions tend to be co-occurring, which means if you are having a problem or abusing or beginning to be involved with addiction with one substance, you're more likely to do it with another. So a lot of times problem gamblers will also be alcoholics or drug addicted or drug abusers. It depends on if you have a family history of gambling or other addictions. Most problem gamblers have another gambler in their life or someone suffering from another addiction. So being aware as adults of your family history around addiction and your communication to the young people in your life about the likelihood that you too may have a problem because someone else in our family did. It's important that adults know that young people who develop problems with gambling usually have poor coping skills, poor ability to handle stress and other difficult life situations, and they also tend to have poor self-esteem. So they use that win and that good feeling about getting that stuffed animal or winning those nickels in bingo as a I feel good about myself substitute. For some people with gambling and other addictions, the only time that they feel good is when they are using their drug of choice or at the casino playing or scratching off that ticket, and otherwise their life feels empty in some way. And so there's a void that's filled by gambling. Also, it's important for adults to know that especially adolescents are at a higher risk of suicide when they have problems with gambling. 14 and 17 years of age are the ages where young people have the highest risk of suicide. And if they are a problem gambler or a pathological gambler, meaning they're addicted to gambling, they are at a very high risk of suicidal ideation, thinking about suicide, or actually attempting suicide if they've had a significant loss or owe a lot of people a lot of money. And especially if their gambling has been secretive, a lot of feelings of guilt and shame go along with that, and people who've been spoken to who attempted suicide as a result of gambling debt said that they just wanted to end their life rather than come clean with their family about all the debt and problems that they've gotten themselves into. There's that much negative emotional feeling that goes along with it. So everyone should know those things about gambling. It's a serious issue. There is an especially high risk for young people, and also boys are 3 times as likely as girls to develop problems with gambling. That's another big issue. A lot of parents feel like if they're at home and they're in the basement and they're gambling and they're playing poker and they're just with their friends, they're not out, they're not at parties, they're not drinking or using other drugs. It's only, the extra $30 that they earned at their side job this week. And that's usually not the truth. As we said, gambling problems go along with other problem behaviors such as alcohol and drug use. And the young people that I've talked to frequently are not playing with their 30 or 40 or 50 bucks. They are staying up all night. They're borrowing money from other people. I've talked to a lot of young boys in particular who pawn their CD player, their iPod, whatever it is that they need to do so that they can go to a poker tournament with their friends in someone's basement and play all night long. So parents need to realize that it's not a risk-free activity. It's not drinking or other drug use, but there are risks that go along with that. I think it's important for young people to know 3 messages about gambling and for other adults to share these messages with them. The first message is that we don't ever want you to gamble illegally. If you're not 18 yet, we don't want you to play the lottery. If you're not 21 yet, we don't want you going to the casino. So we don't ever want young people to gamble illegally. If you do choose to gamble, we want you to know that there are certain risks involved. Gambling is always a game of chance. Most people lose when they gamble. Casinos are so wealthy because the house always wins. So we want you to know the risks and we want you to be realistic about gambling. And if you choose to gamble and you are aware of the risks, we want you to know where you can go for help. We want you to know that just by being young, you're more likely to have a problem. And if you do have a problem, there is help out there and available for you. So those are the things that families and adults can do to reduce youth risk. And in schools particularly, I think it's important to have a policy about gambling. We've done a survey recently, and we just have the preliminary results back from it right now, but the survey asked administrators in schools and students about their policies around gambling. And the discrepancy or the disconnect that we found was that a lot of times adults said, well, we've seen them playing cards, but there's no money being exchanged, so is that gambling? And what we find out from students sometimes is that the money is exchanged after hours, after school, outside of the area where it's not allowed. So frequently if you see dice or cards and no money or other valuable items being exchanged, it doesn't mean that it's not going on. So I think that policies should be in place and they should be clear on what activities are allowed and not allowed, and there should be a clear penalty with help offered as well, and that help being the education around how risky gambling can be for young people.
Yes. Is gambling addictions treated differently than other types of addiction?
In general, no. Right now, gambling, pathological gambling, which is gambling addiction, is classified as what's called an impulse disorder in this book called the DSM-4, and that's the diagnosing manual that treatment providers use to say you have a heroin addiction, you have cocaine addiction, you are alcohol dependent. So right now it's not classified as an addiction, it's classified as an impulse disorder. I can't stop the impulse or the urge to buy those scratch-offs or play those numbers or go to the casino and not stop when I'm out of money. But what research has found is that the chemicals in our brain have the same changes, and people who are pathological gamblers get the same kind of high that someone who's using alcohol or other drugs gets. The same changes go on in our brain, and we didn't know that before. So I think that it's going to be changed over to an addiction classification at some point in time. And in the meantime, As I said before, people with addictions, regardless of what they're addicted to, in general tend to have a lower sense of self-esteem and a lack of coping skills. So in treatment for problem gambling and other addictions, you are going to learn ways to cope without your drug of choice, ways to relieve stress without going to the casino to do it, ways to feel good about yourself without having to win. And for any kind of addiction, there's always triggers or things that kind of give you that urge to get back into that harmful behavior. And for gamblers, that trigger is usually money. And for many drug addicts and alcoholics, their trigger is usually money. They say that, you know, money burns a hole in their pocket or makes them itch because they know they have it, they know that access is close by, and there's an urge, you know, to go and do what it is that has made you feel good for so long. So for people in treatment for gambling addiction, money has to be managed very, very closely. And treatment depends on the severity as well, like with other addictions.
And what is the most common form of youth gambling?
With the survey that we did in the schools, we found that there were two main forms of youth gambling that young people perceive to be as the most popular. The first was card games with friends, and the second was sports betting with friends. And everywhere we go, you know, you hear about the poker tournaments, and I think for high school age youth, that tends to be the most prevalent. For middle school age youth, they said that online gambling and video game gambling, so, you know, betting with friends on who can get to the next level of their game, is what they engage in first.
Right. Well, thank you very much for talking with us today. You were very helpful.
Thank you.
I'm Danielle, and thanks for watching.
Now to Christina for the wrap-up.
Gambling has become a major concern among American teens. Gambling is illegal and can lead to unwanted addictions at an early age. Kids all over see gambling as a form of entertainment on the weekends. As these activities become regular habits, teenagers are becoming closer and closer to exposing themselves to the dangers of gambling. Believe it or not, gambling is an addiction, and like all other addictions, once you start, it can be hard to stop. Take the smart bet and stay away from illegal gambling. For more information, here's where you should go.
Problem Gambling Helpline, 1-800-346-6238. Gamblers Anonymous, 1-800-266-1908. www.gamblersanonymous.org. www.gamanon.org. Connecticut Council on Problem Gambling, www.ccpg.org.
Thank you for watching Ain't Gonna Lie, the show with real questions and real answers, produced by Real Teens.